How's it going, guys? It's lunchtime. Not the best scenery, but it'll do. Sitting behind the building. Making a response video for Tom Noble. I'm not a painter. I don't want to pretend to be a painter. But some of the experiences he's having, I've had and Junior's had. Junior's done a lot of painting. Even if it's on small scale, he's using automotive paint. He's got his ass handed to him many times. And for him, that means the item's going in the garbage. Okay, at least with the car, you could sand it off no matter how bad that sucks. I just tried to call him to confirm something, but he didn't answer. I know he worked late last night again. He did, yesterday was school till 9:30 at night, then he worked till who knows what time in the morning. Wrinkling, whatever other term you want to call it, is basically when the reducer or solvent, whatever term you want to use, interacts with the paint, gets through the paint and gets underneath the paint and reactivates the paint or swells the paint. That's why it gets taller and wrinkles. If you peel it away, you'll see it's only going to go so far. Now, when I went to paint the roof of the wagon, okay, the wagon has multiple stages to it. Okay, a friend of mine, haven't seen him much lately, like I used to see him all the time. But he's a rep for PPG and a couple other brands. Okay, and I don't want to get it backwards, and if I ran and got the can, I would get it right, but it doesn't matter. I like the Deltron, the DBU, DBC. I think it's the DBU I use. But one of the two of them, you could just spray it. You could put reducer in it and spray it. Done. Then right after that, you can put your clear coat on there. Okay? Now, the other Deltron, like I said, I don't want to get the DBC and DBU confused. The other one uses a reactive reducer. That's what it was called. And the stuff is expensive. And when I did research on it, okay, basically reactive reducer is reducer with activator in it. The same activator they use in clear. And when I did research on it, I remember talking about this, I think for, I forgot how many ounces, you put a half an ounce of activator from clear into your reducer, and you don't have to buy the reactive reducer. And it wasn't the cost of the reactive reducer, which was stupid expensive. It's once you crack it open, it's time dated because it has activator in it. The other way, you keep making a fresh batch. Okay? Now, getting back to the first one, where you could just mix your reducer in and shoot it. If you read the sheets on it, it says optional hardener. Now, for a quarter of a pint, I think it was, or a half a pint, it was a little tiny can about this big. At the time was $80. I was like, holy crap. So I called my friend. I said, do I need it? He goes, listen, if you're just doing a quick repair for somebody, no, you don't need it. He goes, but for what you're doing, you need it. He goes, A, it makes the paint stronger. B, if anything ever happens and you go to sand it and reshoot over it, he goes, it won't reactivate. I was like, oh, okay. Because when you actually use the hardener in it, or the activator, whatever you want to call it, the drying time was a little slower. So, my question to you is, I don't know which paint failed, because I can't tell in the video. But whatever one failed, did that have an activator in it? Now, when I did the roof of the wagon, the reason I keep going back to that is because the roof of the wagon covered multiple different types of paint jobs. Okay, the roof of the wagon started out as epoxy. So that has an activator in it, a hardener. I'm going to call them all activators, it doesn't matter. It had high build in it, that had an activator in it. Okay. It had 3 coats of Deltron on it. That one was the one that didn't require the activator, but I sprung for it and I put it in there. Okay. Then here's the next chemical that I used that is a little iffy and could be a problem. I needed something to suspend the flake, and I was going to suspend it in clear. And doing some research, not through my friend, but just doing some research, I came up with using an Intercoat. Okay, I used the House of Color Intercoat. Good, bad, or indifferent, I have no idea. Okay, they claimed it would suspend the flake longer in my gun, which really didn't matter because I had the gun with the activator in it, you know, the agitator. But I used it anyway. Now, that Intercoat didn't have any hardener. So now there's a layer in my car that doesn't have a hardener in it, or an activator. After 3 coats of that, then in 2 stages, there's 8 coats of clear on the car. Okay, there was the 4, but it was really 5 coats of clear. The car sat, it got blocked, and then I put 3 more coats on there. Okay, now that obviously has an activator. So now if I do any kind of repair work on it, which I don't know if you could even repair flake, I would say not, and I sand it down and I hit the area, I would say with the Intercoat with no activator in it, that's going to cause me all sorts of hurt. Okay, as well as if I would have used that base coat without the activator, that would cause me all sorts of hurt. Okay, I know if you're working on, say, a panel of a car, you do the work, you feather your work in. A lot of guys will take epoxy. I said this in the comment. A lot of guys will take epoxy and they'll do a very light coat over it, okay, with no reducer in it. So it's just the actual epoxy and its catalyst. They'll allow that to flash off its full time so it hardens. Then they'll start putting reducer in so they can get it to flow better. And that makes a barrier so nothing activates. So your reducer, which is just super purified thinner, think of it that way. It's really purified thinner is what reducer is. If you put reducer in that's too slow, it lays there. Okay, as it's laying there, it's going to have a chemical reaction. I mean, everybody has sprayed something on some kind of paint and you went to wipe it away and the paint came with it. Okay, lac is a prime example. Lacquer could be 100 years old, you put lacquer thinner on a rag, it comes off. Same thing. You go to spray lacquer over enamel wrinkles. Okay? There's another way of wording this. Lacquer dries from evaporation. Enamel dries from oxidation and evaporation. The base coat with no activator dries from evaporation. Once you put an activator in it, it dries from a catalyst. It dries from a chemical reaction as well as evaporation. So if there's nothing to make it cure besides evaporation, you could reactivate it and technically wipe it off. Wrinkle it off, wipe it off. But I think what happens is, while you get the wrinkle, is the solvent gets under it and can't go anymore. It hit a wall. So technically, if it could flow right through, it wouldn't wrinkle. It goes through and gets trapped there by the next layer that won't allow it in. Right? It goes into the paint and the paint swells. And the only thing paint could do when it swells and delaminates is wrinkle. And if you leave it, it'll harden like a rock again. I mean, you could hit it and break it off, but it'll harden like a rock. So, why it happened next to all the edges? I think it happened next to all the edges because you broke through the clear on all the edges. If you look at the video, the first thing I spot in the video is I could still see the line of the 2 different colors, which concerned me because after the paint job was done, you were going to see that again. Okay, but that's where it seemed to wrinkle the most, where you had the two different heights of the material. Okay, but like I said, I'm not a painter, I'm not there, I'm not looking at the stuff, I'm not even sure what chemicals you actually used. But like I said, Junior has run into this. If you're ready for this one, Junior has run into this with the wet, where not that he had wet on there and it wrinkled, but he sprayed the wet and it wrinkled, and it drove him insane. He couldn't figure out why it was happening, over and over and over and over, and he switched to the SPI and never had the problem again. So there's different chemicals. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the wet. It just was interacting with whatever base coat he was using. Now he sprays, as you guys know, he sprays tricolor. He sprays them all. He puts pearl in there. He puts flake in there. He runs base coat. You know what I mean? He runs all the same phases and stages that you do on a nice, really nice paint job. That's how he gets all those effects. He puts candy in there. So he's just doing it on a smaller scale. So when shit goes wrong, it's all bad. So like I said, I'm not a painter. Maybe a painter could help you more. I'm not sure where you're buying the paint. Here we buy it from an actual paint store. I'm not sure if you're buying that paint from Napa, because I thought you were. If you are, I'm hoping whoever you're dealing with has a very good understanding of their product. Or they can get you in touch with somebody that has a very good understanding of the product. You might want to actually call the manufacturer of the paint, but if you use multiple brands, they're just going to blame it on the other brand. That I could see happening, and that'll just cause frustration, and that doesn't mean that's actually the problem, but they're just going to push it right off instead of trying to figure